Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. This podcast is dedicated to the aspiring writer or artist and will provide inspiration and tips from top professionals in the field, along with contest winners. And here we are at the tail end of the Writers of the Future week for 2022. And I've got Illustrator of the Future winner from volume 30, Michael Talbot, who has been here helping to teach the workshop. And he himself is a very established freelance illustrator. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Hello. So you work out of Boston?
Yeah, I'm currently based in Boston, originally from Jamaica. Yeah.
Cool. So in volume 30, he illustrated Shifter by Paul Eckhart. And then in this volume 38, he illustrated The Professor Was a Thief, which was the story from L. Ron Hubbard that was in there. So I guess the first thing I'm interested in knowing is your trajectory as an illustrator from out of the mother's womb into winning the contest in 8 years ago.
Sure. So it's funny you mentioned out of the mother's womb. So as a kid, I was very, shy, and I would be reserved and introverted. So instead of going outside and playing with my brothers and like the kids in the neighborhood, I'd be inside just drawing by myself. And my mom would see this, and like she'd buy me coloring books and sit down with me and like teach me how to color within the lines and stuff. So from a very early age, she nurtured that, I guess, creative side in me. And it just became my safe space, just something that I've always fallen back on. And I've done that throughout high school. And at that point, I had a choice to either go the art route and pursue my career in art, or pursue my other passion, which is zoology. Not a lot of people know that about me, but yes, I'm very interested in animals and reptiles and stuff. So I had that choice to make, and I figured, well, half the people already know me for my art, so like most of the work is already done at that point. So decided to go with art first, and so I finished high school, and I migrated to the States with my parents, and started college in Boston at Lesley University.
Mm-hmm.
And decided I wanted to study illustration and graphic design. And my freshman year, I figured, the tuition is pretty spendy.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd need some scholarships, or some way of helping out with the tuition. And as I was looking for scholarship opportunities and competitions, stumbled upon Writers and Illustrators of the Future, and that's how I entered.
Wow, that's a cool story there. So did you win on your first entry?
I did.
Wow.
I did win on my first entry. Truth be told, after I entered, I completely forgot about the competition until I got the call that I was one of the winners. And it still took me a while to realize what I believe
What
it was
you had won.
Yeah, it was like what they were talking about on the phone. I was like, wait, what do you mean I've won? I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, once I realized, I was definitely surprised and ecstatic.
That's great. So you came out to Hollywood. Was it in Hollywood?
Yeah.
Okay, so you came up to Hollywood. So what was that week like?
It was jam-packed with things that I never would thought I'd experienced in a million years, essentially, like meeting top names in the industry, meeting established illustrators, like-minded artists who were just like very talented, and just being able to experience just great energy and great talent all in one place. It was definitely life-changing. And I don't say that lightly, because it even though I knew I wanted to do illustration, it opened my eyes in terms of like the possibilities and how actual and real it could be, and like the steps that I could take to get there. So yeah.
Oh, good. Do you remember any particular standouts of the illustrator judges that were there, or speakers?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There was Cliff Nielsen. Once I met him and realized that he was the illustrator for the Narnia Chronicles book covers, I was shocked. Yeah, I definitely grew up with those. So like realizing that he was there and seeing him there and like being able to interact with him and like talk with him and pick his brain, it was real nice.
That's great. So, what was for you the biggest takeaway from the workshop when you attended that, or the gala, or just that week?
I knew I wanted to, at the very least, network, like grow my network, meet people, expand my, I guess, base of who I'm in contact with. Because one thing I realized early on was that even though I may be talented, even though I may apply for jobs and, be able to do my job well, having a solid network or having those connections and referrals, that has helped me since then, like grow and reach areas that I initially would not be able to. So like I went in knowing that I wanted to increase my network, connect with people, and not just superficial, like actually be able to sit down with them, talk with them, get help from them, and maybe even help somebody else. So,
That's great. So now I know you're working in college because you're obviously now very successful as a freelance illustrator and getting more popular. Did you finish the college? Were you able to do that? So you were able to finish that?
So I was able to finish college. I did a
BA?
5-year program. Yeah, BA. Double majored with illustration and design and minored in animation. So I tried to do everything that I could while I was there. And I did not go for my master's. However, after I graduated, I still was called back to teach at said university. So I was teaching there for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah. So you must have did good.
Yep. Whether or not I thought it, the evidence was there.
Yeah. So on the type of art that you create, so do you do mostly like, is it Photoshop or is it acrylic? Is it oil? Is it?
Yeah, sure. So I do a mixture of both. I work on digital pieces in Photoshop for like a lot of the freelance jobs that I have, mainly because it's quicker and it's easier to do edits and stuff with that. However, I
don't like that yellow. Okay, how about orange?
Yeah,
I don't like that orange. Okay, how about green?
Exactly. If we tried that with traditional work, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
However, for more of my personal work, or like, I guess, art pieces that I don't necessarily have a tight deadline on, where I'd want to enjoy the process more and like take my time, I tend to go more traditional. So I work in acrylics, markers, pen and ink. I also use paint markers. So it's like acrylic based, but essentially it allows me to get that clean outline graphic look that I tend to work in a lot.
I get it. And so what type of, what's your most common freelance work that you do?
Right now, I would say the most common freelance work that I do is children's books. So funny enough, I got my first children's book gig as a result of Writers and Illustrators of the Future.
How so?
So the author was looking specifically for a Jamaican illustrator. And that was one of the, I guess, selling points in one of the publications following the event. And they reached out to, well, before they reached out to me, they looked me up and they found the video of the award ceremony. And since then, they were like, "Yep, that's the illustrator that I need." And they got in contact with me. I did the book. It was great, and it kind of snowballed into like other people seeing the work that I did and knew that I worked on children's books. So they reached out for more children's book work and so on and so forth.
Wow, do you know B. Jackson?
Yes. B. Jackson is amazing. She was there as an alumni in the same position that I am here today when I was a winner 8 years ago. So she came back and she spoke with us, showed her work, and I got connected with her. And since then, I've actually been in contact with her on social media. We've like done Instagram live streams together. We've talked about our work, showed our work and stuff. So we definitely keep in contact.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, when she got the NAACP, when she did the children's book that she did on Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Parker Looks Up.
She
was a finalist in the NAACP, whichever award it was. So she came out and I was her +1. That was a lot of fun that night. That was a lot of fun. So now you've gotten so good that we asked you to illustrate The Professor Was a Thief, that story by Owen Hubbard in this year's volume, and to invite you out here to speak to the class. So what did you talk about? What was the thing that they were interested in? What were your, just some of the stuff you're discussing and showing and doing and whatnot?
Yeah, sure. I'll start it off by saying that I was kind of surprised when I was asked to do a workshop because I felt like I wasn't that much different from the winners for this current volume. Seeing just the amount of talent and the skill that everybody possessed, I felt that like I shouldn't be in the position where I'm
Imposter syndrome.
exactly. The good old imposter syndrome. But then the more I just like interacted with them and like got to know them, I realized it's not necessarily I'm in the position of being a workshop leader and like they're the winners. It's more of just from one artist to another, talking about our process or life or journey and seeing how the experiences that I have could possibly help them. And so essentially that's what I did. I had initially planned like a whole talk about, okay, this is how you do like a composition, like how you would prepare a illustration for a children's book. And as I started, I almost completely threw that away. It was more so just like me talking about my journey, my experiences. And it seemed like that connected with them more. And like
it was definitely my feedback that I've got from it. That was really a good connection.
Yeah. And like they were just asking a lot of questions, which was really good. I love the engagement. And it seems like it was well received. So I'm happy about that.
That's great on that. Yeah, we've got not so much on the writer side, but on the illustrator, the subject of it, it's illustrators of the future, and cover illustration and inside illustrations is a very legitimate form of illustration, but art has spread so much more since the inception of the contest.
Yeah.
And it's been good because we've had a pretty good variety of judges and people talking about different things. But it's a real trick keeping up with what's happening right now. In the art world and illustration, because it's not just book illustration, cover illustration, but you've got all the sequential art, the whole thing of doing the comics and graphic novels.
Definitely.
There's all the 3D stuff that now gets done on
modeling and
so many modeling on so many things. You got the gaming, which is just massive right now. There's it's such an explosion of talent that's needed for that. And we've got some of our judges have designed theme parks. That's the whole area of expertise. And then you've got like what Echo does, the stuff with so many corporate, programs that she works with and provide the art for, from Celestial Seasons to, I think, Anheuser-Busch and countries. I mean, just all over. There's so many different things to it. So having somebody to represent all the different aspects of art is different than storytelling. So what's your take on that in terms of like to make a successful illustrator workshop for today's needs of the upcoming artist?
I think I'll answer this in a way that I've approached my art. As I mentioned, in college, I studied illustration, design, and animation. And I knew I wanted to go the illustration route, but I recognized that it was still important and beneficial to study design and animation to help supplement illustration. So similarly, having a broader spectrum or a broader reach and a wider experience base will definitely help supplement and help give different avenues and different viewpoints on how to approach a specific problem that an illustrator might not think about normally. So having judges and having people who have experiences in all these different areas and different sectors and different businesses, I feel that is very pivotal and helpful in like nurturing the artists of today.
So then with respect to an artist, so again, now like revisit this thing on, because somebody likes, all I want to do is paint. I just want to paint, and it's like Larry Elmore. That's all he wants to do is paint. He's got his oils and he does that. And he doesn't do anything else. That's what he does. So he's gone through various things he had to do, but now that he's in his golden years as an artist, he's
Mhm.
He no longer has to do something in order to make his living. And now he's just like, okay, I'm done working for other people. I just want to work for myself. I'm going to paint. I guess that's okay to do at the end of one's career. So, okay, I'm going to settle down and do this.
Mhm.
But right now, for a person getting started in art as a career, what are some tips that you would that you could provide?
Yeah, sure. So I would say if you have a dream or a goal, this is one advice that I like to give to people. If you have a dream or a goal, whether or not you're able to pursue it or achieve it right now, never forget it. Keep it in mind and bear it in mind, because that will help determine and drive your actions. And even if it's only working towards it little by little, you're still getting some work done to it. A lot of people, if when they realize that they're unable to work towards a dream or a goal or achieve it right now, they give up, or they say, "All right, I can't do this right now," so they just completely forget it. And I feel like that definitely cuts off a lot of opportunities right now and in the future by just writing it off. So bearing it in mind while understanding and realizing that you might be in a position that is not suitable for us right now, and being true to yourself in that regard, but still holding yourself accountable and realizing that this isn't the end of the road in that regard. I can always come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing so, you can explore other opportunities, and by keeping it in mind, you can see how doing a different job or exploring a different path may help in your current dream in some other facet that you probably didn't realize.
Okay, I get it. So the idea of persistence,
Mhm.
how does that fit into this mix?
This the same way, yeah, the persistence in the sense of not giving up on that dream, not giving up on that goal or that idea. And persistence is oftentimes confused with stubbornness. And stubbornness is the like you're unwilling to change or try different paths.
Mm-hmm.
Persistence means that you're continuing that same path, and it doesn't discredit or it doesn't prevent you from exploring other options at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in that sense, persistence is key. It will help you. It is a vital and a beneficial character trait, but it's when it becomes stubbornness that a lot of people find problems, or it's when like it's completely void or not there that people will like lose sight of what they want.
Okay. So you have your artistic integrity,
Hmm.
which directs like this is the only way this can be expressed. When you're freelancing and you've been hired by somebody to
Hmm.
paint this thing here, and you're like, no, this is how it needs to be. And the art director says, no, it needs to be this other way.
Hmm.
And you're going, no, it should be this way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So there's a level of sacrifice, I will say, when it comes to working with other people or working on client work. So, in terms of artistic integrity, you would hope that a client hires you because they recognize your artistic integrity or they recognize your artistic vision, and they would respect that and look forward to that input within the process of creating the artwork. But in the sense of where there's a disagreement in terms of like you feel like this should be expressed in a certain way, while the client feels differently. I think communication is key in that regard, where not just saying that it should be this way, explain why, explain how it's more beneficial to represent it in a certain way versus how they might view it or want it.
Mm-hmm.
Say, all right, this might not be good because so and so, or this might be better because so and so. But if you're butting heads and say, no, my preference is this, and they're like, no, I want it this way. This is what me as the client wants. You are doing work for them. So ultimately, there is that level of sacrifice where you will have to essentially give in or decide that you don't want to work with them. But in my opinion, I think like there needs to be that level of communication and understanding between the artist and the client, and being able to express effectively why you have this agreement.
Okay, that's a good answer on that, because I've seen people, I'm going to argue, I'm going to hold my position because I got my integrity on it, but yet you said the client's the one that's paying for it.
Yeah.
And you have that thing like, well, they're hiring me because of my skill and my vision, but they're hiring me because they want your skill, but they want their vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if at some point it just becomes too much to bear, you can just not do the work. You can terminate a contract. You can decide that, okay, this goes against not just my artistic vision, but if it's against either your morals or whatever else, that is an option as well, to just not do the work.
Have you ever had to do that yourself?
Not to that extent, but yes, I have turned down work because I either noticed or realized before we've gotten into it whether or not it would line up with either my morals, or whether or not it would line up with my vision of like how I want to promote myself and my work.
Right. Okay. That sounds cool. Now, have you ever had obstacles yourself that you had to overcome to, obviously it's not been smooth sailing all along.
Yeah.
So have you ever come close to throwing in the towel on your art?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think there has been anything in my life that has been so drastic that I would give up on such a big part of myself.
I get you. So, Max has that story too. She had teachers in school there in Turkey who told her, I hope you fail. Because she wasn't doing the traditional, what you're supposed to do in Turkey. She was doing her art, Have you ever had stuff like that where you had people that just like wished you ill?
Thankfully, no.
Good.
I would say the art curriculum within my time in Jamaica was not very developed. It's still a work in progress right now. I've seen like the island itself is making an effort to develop it some more, but it's still nowhere close to where it needs to be, and where I guess the art curriculum in America or most other countries are. And regardless of that, I've had many professors and mentors who recognize not necessarily my skill or talent, but my passion, and decided to nurture that, regardless of whether or not I would quote unquote make it as an artist in Jamaica. They just recognized the passion and nurtured that passion. So
there's no way you can turn out somebody that wears the most awesome bow ties of all different kinds. Yeah. So now you illustrated the professor was a thief. So I've spoken to various old timer illustrators who actually, like Frank Kelly Freeze, Will Eisner, who had illustrated Owen Hubbard stories back when they first were written, and they definitely had for them, it was so easy to illustrate his stories because it was so vivid mental pictures that his stories would evoke. What's your, having done it, so what's your experience or what's your comments on illustrating Owen Hubbard's story?
Illustrating Professor Was a Thief was definitely a fun experience, mainly because the story it didn't follow the same I guess pattern of like, okay, you have a hero and a villain.
It totally
like
broke
a good
your
guy
trope.
and a bad guy.
Yeah.
It was more so of like, these are complex characters who have a wide range of motives. It's just how their stories overlapped, and it creating this wild experience. So the quote unquote antagonist was this also relatable, timid, personable like professor. And so it was interesting to kind of take a step back and move away from the tropes of, okay, I'm gonna do this like either action scene or like work on like good versus bad or something like that, and more so figure out how to capture that essence of a complex yet fun hodgepodge, essentially, of characters. And I think it really provided a nice visual for me.
No, yeah, you did amazing. And for those listening to this thing, it's in Writers of the Future Volume 38. This illustration you did for The Professor Was a Thief, which is just a real fun illustration that you did. So when you did your workshop or attending this workshop here, are there any particular L. Ron Hubbard essays or articles that he wrote that resonate with you?
Yeah, sure. There was one in his book titled Art, I believe it
Mm-hmm.
was, about artist communication, essentially, and how the technical aspect of creating the art shouldn't exceed or surpass the effectiveness of the communication for the piece that you're working on. And
What does that mean? And
yeah, essentially, what's first and foremost important is how you communicate the essence of the piece, like what you're trying to say, how you're trying to connect with the audience, what are the themes you're trying to express. As artists, we tend to really hyper focus on one tiny element. Let's say, for example, you're doing an environment and like there's one leaf that you're putting all the detail in, and you're zooming in, and you're just painting and doing all the lighting correctly and stuff, but you're forgetting the rest of the piece. Unless that leaf is the focal point, unless that leaf is actually what you're trying to communicate in the piece, everything else needs to be done either at the same level of technical skill, or those not unimportant but lesser or secondary elements should be toned down so that the main, I guess, theme or the main purpose that you want to try and communicate shines through.
right. Okay, good. And there's this story I heard. Maybe you can fill me in on it.
Okay.
Galleries, having galleries and preparing for galleries,
Mhm.
and you being competitive.
I see where this is going.
Okay.
Yes. So, as I mentioned, I grew up in Jamaica. I went to high school there, and my best friend from high school in Jamaica, his name is Richard Natu. Essentially, we both went through the art curriculum together. He was a dear close friend of mine, and so we kept on pushing each other, encouraging each other, and like trying to just grow in our artistic talents.
Mm-hmm.
And after I moved to the States, he stayed in Jamaica and went to school for architecture while I went to school for art.
Mm-hmm.
However, as he was studying architecture, he was still producing art. And so he was putting on shows, he was creating work and selling them. And so I definitely felt a bit challenged in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
where I felt I should be doing more if like he's not studying art yet he's doing more art related things and being more successful than me. And it wasn't in a sense of like I was upset that I wasn't performing as well as him or upset that he was surpassing me. It was motivation and inspiration for me to do as well as him and to, produce work as well so that I can share it with him and show it
Right.
with him. And so since then we've had this friendly competition. I call him my art rival and arch nemesis, essentially.
Mhm.
So like anytime he does a project, he would show it to me and like tell me about it. And that would inspire and motivate me to go and do a project so that I can bring it back to him and tell him about it. And so on forth, so forth and so on. Like he'd just take that and it would be a constant cycle of motivation and inspiration. And I guess recently, well, actually, back in 2019, he in January he called me out on Twitter. He made a post announcing an exhibition that he was planning to put on, and he called me out and said, "Hey, Michael, I'm putting on this show. Make sure you have a show as well." So he challenged me to an art exhibition showdown, essentially.
Hmm.
So the aim was to have a completely new body of work, all new pieces based on or different story ideas. The show had to be titled the same thing. The shows had to have happen on the same dates, and I should have it in Boston while he has it in Jamaica. And essentially, it wasn't necessarily to show whose exhibition would be more successful. It was more so to push us to get to that next level and
Right.
actually improve as artists. And we ended up having multiple shows throughout the year. I had 3, he had about 4 or 5. And that was the most work I've ever produced in such a short time. And yet I think that was my most successful year as an artist. And similarly, this year as well, I noticed that he was putting on a bunch of shows. Since the fall, he had put on 4 or 5 different shows, and I
But yet
felt
that's not his main line of work.
no, it is.
Oh, now it is.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So
Got it.
he after he finished school for architecture, he got a job as an architect, but then he quit his job and now he's a full-time freelance artist
Freelance.
as well.
Wow.
So, and he's very successful. So like I'm super proud and happy about that. But again, it's that constant inspiration, motivation to improve and get to the next
Sure.
level so that we can kind of pay forward that cycle. But yes, so since the fall, he had put on 4 or 5 shows, and I realized like, okay, I haven't put on the show in a while. I can't be left in the dust by him.
Mhm.
So that pushed me to work on a whole new body of work again, essentially paying homage to him and like the work that I've seen him done. And so I've again produced like 17 new pieces within 1 month. And now I have a show up in Boston currently, as I'm here in LA, called Salvation Redux, exploring works that is inspired by his previous exhibitions.
Wow. That's pretty good. Was there something here where you knew he was going to produce a lot, so you did more than what you thought he was going to do? Then it came out that he did.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely. We with the show back in 2019, we both kind of estimated that we'd each do around 20 pieces or so, um, and just 20 pieces for one show. And I took that and under the quiet, I was like, okay, well, if he's gonna do 20 and he's been doing so much other work, like I have to, up my game. I have to kind of outshine him essentially. And so I ended up doing 3 shows in 53 pieces. And he definitely blew me out of the water, like over 200 pieces. So yeah, it really is an interesting time. He keeps me on my toes, but it's a fun time.
That's great. Now, how important is it in general for art, or at least for you, to have someone to push you and to have that give you that urge to do better? Or is that an important thing to have that something to spark you, not just your own
Yeah.
internal voice saying do more, but to
Hmm.
actually have something out there in the world?
Yes, definitely. I feel that having that external push or that external motivation is key and very, very helpful and beneficial to growing as an artist. Not everyone has that internal motivation and
Yeah.
drive. And even though art might be a passion, we might not always feel that passion or it might not always be expressed. Having someone to push you, but also someone to encourage you and to like walk you through things like brainstorm ideas, help figure out different ways of figuring out setting up shows or approaching a piece,
Hmm.
solving a different problem, having another set of eyes to look on something and give you feedback is very pivotal and key in terms of like growth that you as a singular isolated individual might not be able to provide yourself.
That makes sense. Now, how important is it to, before you even discuss art, to make sure you have yourself a safe place in order to create your art? Like, can you
Um,
go anywhere? Like, okay, I'm gonna go into a subway station. Just okay, I'm gonna sit here on the thing and I'm gonna do my art. Just
mhm.
having a safe place, a safe space to do your art. How important is that as a preliminary?
Um, I think that definitely varies between individuals. Some people are, I guess, more outgoing and relaxed and comfortable with, I guess, the world around them,
Hmm.
while others are can be introverted, closed off, isolated, but also timid and shy. Where I guess public eyes or people who are unfamiliar to them are more of a hindrance in terms of like the creation process and or the creative process. And so, depending on the individual, having that space where that safe space where they
Hmm.
can actually sit down and say, "All right, it's just me and this art," and I can express however I want to express without judgment, without critique, without anything. It's just a raw flow of creative energy, essentially. that definitely is pivotal and helpful for an individual like that, while others can tend to feed off of that uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
that excitement of, I guess, the public or not knowing how people are going to interpret things, or desiring not necessarily conflict but controversy within their art, and how they're going to take it or not want to take it, and so, as I mentioned, yeah, it's gonna depend on the individual, or the artist themselves.
I get it. Have you ever gone through a period where you didn't want to show your art to somebody because you were afraid of criticism?
I don't believe so, and I think that's mainly in part due to my friend Natu. Since, I guess, I've been friends with him for years now, and I've always shown my work to him. We've always done art together. Whether or not I'm showing it to other people, I've pretty much always shown it to him. So that has I've had practice, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
talking about my art and showing it to at least one person. So expanding that and showing it to a wider audience was much easier, or it came easier to me, because I already had that, I guess, point of reference.
Right. Now, you've obviously had considerable drive all your life to be an artist.
Mhm.
So, for somebody who's out there who's aspiring to be an artist
Mhm.
and maybe doesn't have that drive, any tips of how somebody can like better zero in on that drive to shed themselves of those things that distract from that?
Um, that is hard.
Yeah.
uh, there is no, I personally, I don't know if there's any easy way to do that. It might always be a challenge, but I think, again, as I mentioned, remembering and keeping your goals in mind and your passions in mind, and not forgetting that, whether or not you feel the drive and the motivation now, once you keep it in mind, there will be a time when that spark will happen. And I think that's like, once you notice, or being aware of that, is key, that you can jump on it and latch on it and act on it.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And then because I know that artists in general, you got
Mhm.
actors, you got storytellers, you've got painters and illustrators. Sometimes you can have these soul suckers that can latch onto you.
Yes.
Have you experienced that at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. Both in just, I guess, general audience, and also clients. And I think it's very, very important to be able to recognize that early on, whenever you're either showing your work to somebody who's like that, or being approached by someone who wants to work with you, who might be like that. Um,
How can you tell them? For you, for your own
yeah, yeah,
experience.
yeah. I guess, in the sense of, like, just being honest and saying, if if the soul sucking, essentially, is whether through, like, you're not seeing it being a beneficial working environment, or if you feel that they don't line up with, again, your morals or ethics, or your vision for the art that you want to produce, you can just tell them, like, hey, I appreciate you reaching out to me about this. Um, for the time being, I don't think this lines up with my artistic vision. If you want, I can get you in contact with somebody else, or pass you on to another client. And you don't really have to explain beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So, see, sometimes you can be someone can have a legitimate criticism, or I wouldn't even say criticism, but just a concern about something. How can you distinguish between someone with a concern and someone who's just a jerk and means well,
Yeah.
and is just trying to soul suck you?
Yeah. I think it's less about being able to tell whether they're a jerk, or if it's genuine criticism, and being able to understanding how to accept criticism. Whether or not I don't think any, like, all criticism will line up with your vision and with your intention with your art and stuff. but being able to isolate what they're saying, figure out why they're saying it, whether through asking them to explain further or to just pick it apart and say, all right, I can kind of see how they're getting this point to this point, and then deciding whether or not you want to implement it. Criticism or receiving criticism does not necessarily mean that you have to use or implement everything that you get. It might not be pretty when you get bad criticism, but again, you are in charge of your art in that regard, where you can decide whether or not to apply or implement said criticism.
I got it. For yourself as an artist, when you agree to do something, do you always do a contract?
I try to do that now. Yes. Initially, I did not.
You did a handshake?
Not even a handshake. It was over the phone or through text, and I have learned over the years through either hard experience or through recommendation to always, even if it's just something very quick and like short, to have some form of contract written out where there's a written or documented agreement.
So seems like you've been there, done that. So with what
Yeah.
you just said there, so what would be an example of what happened that maybe you didn't learn your lesson the first time, but the second time or third time? So like what actually
Mhm.
happened? What was that scenario?
Um,
I'm sure for somebody who's aspiring, like someone says they want me to do something, they're saying they'll give me $25 if I do this.
yeah. So there are two different ways we can take this. One is the way that most people would expect, the payment. Contracts help a lot in that regard, where as an artist, I would always encourage someone to accept some form of down payment or deposit beforehand, before doing a freelance gig, because it definitely isn't as certain as most other like jobs or company or
Mm-hmm.
business projects. So having in writing that, all right, before you even start the project, there needs to be a deposit of this amount or this percentage, and then at different either different milestones or upon completion, you will have the rest of the amount paid. Having that in writing will be able to hold not just you but them accountable to getting the work done on time and hitting these check marks and these milestones, and then getting the payment on time so that both parties are happy with the outcome.
Right.
The other one is in the sense of like the agreement on the final product. So as an artist, you can do something and you feel like it's the best thing ever, and then the client is like, no, this is not what I want. If it's agreed upon on the contract beforehand, you can refer back to that and say, well, actually, it was. This is exactly what you asked for. This is exactly what I gave you. What you're asking for now are different edits or a complete different design. We'll need to rework the contract and sign it again and then approach it that way. Or if they have, or if you agree on like a certain amount of edits. So, say for example, you do the work, you have the final work presented, and you have up to 3 edits to make. And if the
So you
client,
what you do is 3. Yourself is your standard is
it definitely varies from project to project,
okay.
but I would say like 3 to 5 non-major edits. And so if the client ends up exceeding that or wanting to exceed that, then you have the ability to say, all right, per the contract, you agreed upon, this amount of edits. Any additional edits will incur additional charges. And that will help the artist to not be taken advantage of by clients who might just want to, I guess, keep them in their pocket essentially and soul suck.
Right. Someone says, "Oh yeah, that's exciting. Can you do this and this?" And you say, "Sure, I'll do that." And okay, you need to pay me $500. Sure, no problem. And then you do it, and then you don't see any money.
Yes, that has happened to me in the
Oh
past
no!
before. Um, Funny enough, I think my first book job before even this competition, it was to format a book and do the book cover and everything, and I did it, and I did not see the money from that. Months would pass, a year would pass, and I'd reach out to them, I wouldn't get any reply. And then more months would pass and I'd get like a small deposit or percentage of the money. And then I wouldn't hear back from them again. And like things, it just, to this day, I just wasn't paid in full. So to prevent that, I I either ask for the deposit ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
so that at the very worst case scenario, I have already gotten either half the amount or a percentage of the amount. Or what is, I guess, more recommended is that you have the deposit ahead of time. And then upon completion of the work, the client pays the remainder before you hand over the final files. So that way, you guarantee that you get your full payment, and at that time the exchange is made.
Okay. Now, I'm a newbie. I really want my work out there. I feel like I've got something to contribute,
Mhm.
and that makes me certain prey for the shyster, the guy that's going to want to take advantage of you for free, doing something or doing something so cut rate, but you're desperate. I got to get something. I need something to put in my portfolio,
Mhm.
that I've sold my work. So at what point should a person kind of go, it's not worth it versus, okay, I'm just starting out. I need to get something and start building up
Mhm.
a reputation.
Um
But not a reputation as a sucker.
yeah. I think that that's a hard question to answer, because having that mindset of I'm a newbie and I'm just starting out and I want to break into the world is already diminishing yourself as an artist or diminishing yourself and your talent. So instead of thinking of I'm a newbie, think of yourself as I'm an artist. What are the rates within the industries that I want to get into? And start from there. How are people within the industry approaching things, and start from there? So it's a reframing of the mindset from I'm a newbie to what are things that are implemented or already out there that I can implement in my practice. And I think it really does boil down to how you market yourself
Uh-huh.
and how you present yourself to others, right? So social media helps. There's a plethora of social media platforms right now. And if you want to, I guess, connect with people and to like get your work in front of their eyes, go on social media, meet people, network as much as you can, reach out to artists that you know or see and say, hey, I'm an artist as well. I do so and so type of work. I'm interested in getting into this industry. I see that you are already established in this field. I see you've done work for that. Are there any pointers that you might have for me, or would you be able to point me in the right direction and stuff like that? Reaching out to other artists and
Mm-hmm.
networking that way will definitely help you avoid some of the pitfalls and the downfalls like right off the bat. But I think it's important to reframe that mindset of I'm a beginner and start thinking I'm an artist who's interested in this field.
Wow, that's a really good answer, and it's not one I was expecting. So that's great. Thank you for that. So how important is it to you to like pay forward, to help other guys as compared to just focusing in your career?
Um, well, short answer, I think it's extremely important in terms of how that might look or how it's expressed. There are very varying different ways. As I mentioned, after I graduated, I taught at my university for 3 years. Teaching isn't my passion, I can say, but I realized that it was beneficial to not just me, but to the students who I was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if I could, yes, I taught, but I realized I wanted to focus more on the work that I was producing. And by being able to do that, I can pay it forward and lead by example in that sense. I realize I teach or relay information better through demoing or by doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of Instagram lives where I'd be videoing and live streaming while I'm drawing and while I'm doing.
I think I've seen one or two of them. I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I essentially open up the floor for all the viewers to either join the live or like ask questions about what I'm working on. And I'm able to explain the process that I'm doing, give them a glimpse into like the world of a working freelance illustrator, like what goes into a project and stuff like that. So paying it forward in that regard is how I've found, I guess, a way to express that for me.
Now you came out here and you actually taught. I can't say the kids because
yeah, most of them are older than me. So yeah.
But what was that like?
As I mentioned, that imposter syndrome really hit hard at the beginning, but similarly to when I was teaching classes at my university at Lesley, it became more of a conversation and more of a like relaying my experiences in hopes that, you know, it might shine or shed some light on different ways that they can approach something. But also like it opens up a dialogue, a conversation where we can talk more on a level playing field and help each other because it's a two-way street. I'm learning as much from them as they're learning from me during this talk and this workshop as they're asking questions and like essentially not forcing me, but like helping me think about things in a different way, but also them relaying their experiences within the field and how I might be able to use my knowledge to help them in that regard. And by doing so, I'm taking their experiences and applying it to my life as well.
Right. Now, the one last thing I want to talk about before we start wrapping up here is at the awards ceremony, we played a never before seen video of Frank Frazetta.
Yes.
Now, as an artist, I don't know to what degree you respect, admire Frank Frazetta, but tell me what that was like seeing that, because nobody's ever seen that before. Nobody's ever seen live or seen color footage of Frank Frazetta speaking. There's been a lot of videos with my air quotes here, you know, with playing an audio recording of him as they roll through his art, but not him actually sitting down talking to you and getting what he has to say. So what was that like, and what did you get out of that?
That was wild, to say the least. I don't even know if I've ever seen his face before that time. Like I've always heard his name, I've known his art, I've seen his art, I've always associated him with the art world and like his work. But again, as you mentioned, like it's usually his audio or voice rolled over with other images. And so like seeing that color footage and like it does feel like he's sitting there with you talking and like he was part of the workshops earlier this week, you know. So I think that was like very, very cool and wild to experience.
Yeah, he's one of those artists that a lot of people have tried to emulate. You know, he's definitely a master. Well, this has been great. We've like blown through an hour like in 10 minutes. It seems like it's just, I knew it would happen, but nevertheless, it has happened. So for someone to find you on either social media or on whatever pages, how can they find you?
Sure. So my website is talbotsart.com. So it's TALBOTSART.com. And similarly on Instagram and Twitter at Talbot's Art, TALBOTSART. I also have a Patreon. Yeah, you can find me on those platforms at Talbot's Art.
So we just look for the guy that's got this amazing bow tie, and we know we got the right Talbot.
Yep, the bow tie and the afro.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been great being able to talk to you, Michael. And now that we've got you here, I'm looking forward to seeing you much more.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Writers of the Future podcast wherever you get your podcasts. The Writers of the Future podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeart, and Spotify. We've also been syndicated on the United Public Radio Network, where you can find these podcasts as well. The Writers of the Future series can be purchased wherever books are sold in the U.S., Canada, the UK, Australia, and South Africa, and available everywhere else on Amazon. Writers and Illustrators of the Future are contests created by L. Ron Hubbard to provide a means for the aspiring writer and artist to be seen and acknowledged. It is free to enter and open to new and amateur short story writers and artists of science fiction or fantasy. Again, thank you very much, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Centralist Radio Show. How is everyone in the world? Since I know lots of people all around the planet listen to us, this show particularly goes out to about 100, 120 countries. It doesn't have the reach of some of my other shows that I host, but it's also mostly a U.S. Political news show. And it's not always politics. We talk about a lot of things. Mike, and whoever's helped, Jay's going to join with us next week. Linda's joining us later on tonight. We'll introduce her properly when she comes in later. So, you never know who's going to be here with us. And anyone who wants to come on before I say this, anyone who wants to come on with political experience or research experience, you don't necessarily have to be a political buff, but you have to know your research. What happens over the years, I've done hosting with a lot of people, and some of the younger ones, this usually doesn't happen to older hosts because they're usually a little bit more mature and a little bit better researchers. But for some of the younger ones, they want to get on and talk about this, and then they get their ass in a corner because they didn't do their research and find out what was actually going on. They just heard something on the internet and said, okay, this is news, man. Well, no, that's not always news. It doesn't always work that way. But, come check us out. We're here every Friday night from now on. We're back full time. I'm caught up on everything I need to be caught up on. And so we're back. And like I said, we will be having additional hosts and friends joining us for whatever may be going on. Now, and when we were in the break here at the green room, Michael Langley, that is, was telling me he's going to vote for Joe Biden in 2024. And I was like, wait, what? So I was just stunned. I still am stunned, man. So, Michael, What is this about, man? I mean, what? Have you been smoking crack?
I like the freewheeling lifestyle of Hunter, man. He's kind of my hero at this point. I mean, the guy's a complete derelict, but yet he's got all this billions going on. He seems like he just likes to have a good time, no matter how illegal it is.
He does. Well, you know what? You know what, Hunter, and I hate to say this on the air, but Hunter reminds me a lot about myself with a little less money back when I was young, because I like to get in all kinds of trouble. I just
naked with guns.
That
sounds like you now.
That is me now. I mean, I don't have any problem with those kind of things. And as far as him making money off his daddy's business ventures, that as long as it wasn't illegal, I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, that's what having a dad's about. If they can hook you up and move you on or help you to get along in the world, that's even better. I mean, shit. I lost mine when I was 16, so I know how it is to have to do it on your own.
I see him as a dysfunctional, like learning disability type of guy who just was loaded with money. I also, apples don't fall far from the tree. Now, Hunter's laptop is back out there, which is loaded with felonies. And then also the stories of Joe Biden taking showers with his daughter, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
that just, I hate to lead with this story tonight, but and this is not the first time we've talked about this, but so the first time this leaked was about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It was before the election. And everybody said, oh, it's fake, it's fake, it's fake. Well, now it's been verified. It is his daughter's diary. And when you hear the way she writes this, it's creepy. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a centralist, a liberal. It's creepy. It is Epstein creepy. Yes, that is my personal view, whoever sent me that, but it's creepy. And I don't know. I don't like this guy being president. I remember saying all this stuff about Trump, and then we find out that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago and said, don't ever come back to my hotel again. You're not welcome to any of my hotels. So whereas Clinton and Biden seemed to go on vacation with this guy, Trump seemed to give him the boots. I mean, they tried to swing it every kind of way with the media, but in the end, they couldn't because he wasn't on the plane's list. But Clinton and Biden,
as an investigator. As an investigator, if I look at the Biden timeline and I look at just the photos and videos that are available to us, the public, I see him kissing, grabbing little children, women, feeling them up, putting his hands where they belong, acting inappropriately with little children, nuzzling them and kissing them. These stranger children.
He makes me think. All my conspiracy friends who are always writing to me, this guy makes me think they're right sometimes. with Bohemian Grove and stuff like that, it makes me think they're right sometimes, because this guy, obviously, I mean, I have seen him touch people, especially girls, even some boys. And I'm thinking, why ain't you in jail? One time, okay, it was an accident. Maybe he was drunk, maybe he was fucked up. Ooh, beep, beep. Sorry, I got to blink that out. But I mean, come on. And he does it in such a way. I mean, it's on television in the middle of the Senate. He reaches down and, he runs his hand down this girl's hair. I'm thinking, this is not your child. If that was my daughter, I'd have lost it. I'm just telling y'all now. I'd have lost it right then and there. I'd have been going to jail for attacking the senator.
He's touchy-feely. But then, of course, there was a woman who accused him of molestation or rape, and she left the Capitol because of that. I mean, that. So, I mean, there's stuff there.
I heard he tried to molest Linda Tripp. I'm sorry. I know that was gross. I'm sorry.
He must have gotten into Hunter's junk, man. Something like that.
Oh, shit. Sorry, guys. That was poor taste on my part.
I'm saying that Linda Tripp isn't attractive, and she's not. So I'm just.
That's the mildest way you could possibly say that. When I seen that woman for the first time, I was like, oh my, because I couldn't figure out why did she turn on her like this? That was such a crappy thing to do to this young girl. I mean, what was she at the time? 19, 20, or 21, something like that. I mean, she's a pup. And this Monica Lewinsky, how old is she? I know she was in the 20s.
23.
Yeah, I mean, I know she was a baby. And here's this old woman. Now, once I seen her, I knew why.
Don't give me the baby.
Okay, I know she was plotting. Because just like all girls do. But,
she was a freewheeling female riding the carousel, man, plain and simple. She told her friends she was going to get Bill Clinton, that she was going to get him, and he's easy on the pull anyway. So pretty much simple.
No, Christopher. No, I mean plotting. No, both men and women plot. And in this case, we were talking about Monica Lewinsky, so I said women, but no, men plot just as much as women do. No, they're not. Men can be just as gossipy too. So y'all guys don't act like, oh, I don't gossip. My ass. I know, but still, come on. When guys tell me that, I want to just look at him and go, really? Like, what do you? No, I mean, come on. And there's nothing wrong with gossip, unless you're talking about Amber Turd, and I don't hear about her anymore. But so we're gonna move on. But
I love how she came out saying, "I still love you, Johnny. I love you." You know what I mean? She should have finished